The bruise on my wrist was turning purple by the time I finally called the police. Such a small thing, really. Just 5 finger marks where Cade had grabbed me a little too hard during our latest fight. Nothing compared to the bruises he'd left on my heart, my life, my future. But I need to start earlier, back when I thought boring was the worst thing a relationship could be. 6 months ago, I was living with Brandon in a nice apartment in downtown Sacramento. Brandon, the software engineer. Brandon, who brought me flowers every Friday. Brandon, who remembered my mom's birthday and helped my dad fix his computer. Brandon, who made love like he did everything else, carefully, thoroughly, predictably. We'd been together 3 years. 3 stable, comfortable years of Saturday farmers markets and Sunday meal prep. Of shared Netflix passwords and separate savings accounts for our future house. Of his friends' game nights and my book club meetings. Of being asked, "When's the wedding?" by everyone who knew us. The wedding? That's what started it, I think. Brandon's proposal, if you could call it that. We were cleaning up after dinner one night. He washed, I dried, same as always, when he said, "I've been thinking we should get married next fall. The venue my sister used has an opening in October. What do you think?" Not, "Will you marry me?" Not a ring or a knee or even eye contact. Just a practical suggestion slotted between dishwashing and taking out the trash. "That's how you're proposing?" I'd asked, setting down the plate I was drying. Brandon had looked confused. "We've talked about getting married." I thought we were on the same page. Did you want something more formal? Formal. Like our relationship was a business arrangement that needed proper documentation. "I wanted to feel something," I said. "You don't feel anything?" "I feel comfortable, safe, like I'm checking boxes on a life plan." He'd dried his hands slowly, that little furrow appearing between his brows that meant he was processing. I thought those were good things. Comfort, safety, stability. They are. They're just not enough. That night, we'd talked in circles until we were too tired to continue. Brandon suggested couples counseling, made a spreadsheet of therapists in our insurance network, set up consultations with the top 3 based on reviews and specialties. Even our relationship crisis was organized. I met Cade the next week at a bar I'd never been to before. I'd gone out with work friends, needing noise and strangers and overpriced cocktails, needing to feel unlike myself for a few hours. He was everything Brandon wasn't. Leather jacket in California heat, motorcycle helmet on the bar beside him, dark eyes that looked at me like I was something to be devoured, not cherished. When he smiled, it was crooked, dangerous, nothing like Brandon's earnest grin. "You look lost, princess," he'd said. And I should have walked away right then. Princess, who calls someone that? But I didn't walk away. I let him buy me a drink. Let him tell me about his tattoo shop, his bike, his theory that life was too short for playing it safe. Let him mock the tech bros in their button-downs, not mentioning that I'd left one at home. "What's your story?" he'd asked, leaning close enough that I could smell cigarettes and something darker, muskier. "Let me guess. Nice job, nice apartment, nice boyfriend who bores you to tears. How did you—" "Because girls like you don't end up in bars like this unless they're running from something." He'd traced a finger down my arm and I'd shivered. "And princess, you look like you're dying to run." I went home to Brandon that night but couldn't stop thinking about Cade. About the way he'd looked at me. The way my skin had burned where he'd touched it. The way he'd kissed me against my car like Brandon never had, all tongue and teeth and want. "How was your night?" Brandon had asked from the couch, pausing his coding to smile at me. "Fine. Just drinks with the girls. My first lie, the gateway drug to all the others. I started finding reasons to go back to that bar. Work happy hours that didn't exist. Friends who needed support through imaginary crises. Brandon never questioned it, never checked my location or smelled another man's cologne on my clothes. He trusted me completely. That trust made it easier and harder at the same time. After 3 weeks of stolen kisses and inappropriate texts, Cade invited me to his apartment. "Unless you're scared," he'd added, that crooked smile making my decision for me. His place was nothing like Brandon's organized space. Motorcycle parts on the dining table, empty beer bottles lining the counter, a mattress on the floor instead of a proper bed frame. It should have repulsed me. Instead, I found it thrilling, real, raw. The sex was like that too, nothing like Brandon's gentle consideration. Cade fucked like he rode his bike, fast, dangerous, making me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten existed. He left marks, made me scream, didn't ask permission before trying something new. "Your boyfriend doesn't do this to you, does he?" he'd said afterward, tracing the bite mark on my shoulder. "Don't talk about him," I'd replied, but we both knew that was exactly why I was there. Because Brandon didn't do any of this. Brandon made love, Cade fucked. And apparently I was the kind of woman who needed both. Except I couldn't have both, not honestly. The double life lasted 2 months. 2 months of lies and shower excuses and deleted texts. Of feeling guilty every time Brandon kissed me goodnight and electric every time Cade texted me to come over. Of hating myself and not being able to stop. Brandon knew something was wrong. Of course he did. He started trying harder. Surprise date nights, weekend trips, the kind of spontaneous gestures I'd said I wanted. But they felt forced, like he was following a how to save your relationship checklist. "I love you," he'd say, holding me closer in bed. "I love you too," I'd reply, wondering if Cade was texting other girls while I played house with my boyfriend. The end came suddenly and predictably. Brandon came home early from work with food poisoning. Found me getting ready for another fake girls' night, wearing lingerie he'd never seen. "You look beautiful," he'd said from the doorway. "Special occasion?" "Just felt like dressing up," I'd lied, pulling a dress over the evidence. But he'd seen the new underwear, the careful makeup, the nervous energy, seen me check my phone and smile at something that wasn't from him. "Are you cheating on me, Piper?" The question hung between us like a blade. I could have lied. Probably would have if he'd asked differently, but the quiet certainty in his voice, the sadness already settling in his eyes, I couldn't add to it. "Yes." He'd sat on our bed like his legs had given out. "How long? 2 months? Who is he?" "Does it matter?" "I guess not." He'd looked around our bedroom like he was seeing it for the first time, or the last. "I'll stay at Tom's tonight. We can figure out the apartment later." "Brandon, wait. Can we talk about this?" "What's there to talk about?" "You're cheating on me. You've been cheating for months. Every night you came home and kissed me, you were lying." He'd stood, grabbed an overnight bag. "I can't do this right now. I need to think." "I'm sorry," I'd said, meaning it, but knowing it wasn't enough. "Yeah," he'd replied, "me too." He'd left without drama, without yelling, without giving me the fight I probably deserved. Just quietly gathered his things and walked out of our life together. I'd gone to Cade's that night, mascara ruined, seeking comfort in the chaos he provided. He'd answered the door shirtless, a girl's laugh echoing from inside. "Princess," he'd grinned. "Didn't expect you tonight." "Who's here?" "Just a friend. You okay? You look like shit." Brandon and I broke up. He found out about us. "Us?" Cade had laughed, the sound sharp. "There's no us, baby. We're just having fun. But I left him for you. I didn't ask you to do that." He'd leaned against the doorframe, blocking my view inside. "Look, you're hot and the sex is great, but I'm not looking for anything serious. Thought you knew that." The girl had appeared behind him then, wearing one of his shirts. Young, pretty, looking at me with mild curiosity. "This your girlfriend?" she'd asked. "Nah, just a friend. She was just leaving." I'd stood there, homeless and heartbroken, realizing what I'd thrown away for this. For a man who saw me as just another conquest, for sex that made me feel alive but apparently meant nothing. "Can we talk tomorrow?" I'd asked, hating how desperate I sounded. "Sure, princess." Text me. He'd closed the door in my face. I'd spent that night in a hotel crying over my stupidity. Brandon's things were gone when I got home the next morning. Just like that, 3 years erased. He'd left the engagement ring he'd bought on the kitchen counter, a simple solitaire, classic and elegant, everything I'd thought I didn't want. I'd texted him apologies, explanations, pleas for forgiveness. He'd responded once, "Please don't contact me again. I'll have Tom coordinate moving out. Clean, simple, final." But I still had Cade, or thought I did. When I texted him the next day, he responded hours later with, "Sorry, baby, busy day." When I asked to see him, he said he had plans. When I showed up at his shop, he was annoyed. "You can't just show up at my work," he'd said, pulling me aside. "What's your deal?" "My deal? I left my boyfriend for you." "I told you not to do that." "We were having fun. You're the one who made it complicated." "I thought we had something." "We did." Past tense. You were a good time when you were sneaking around all guilty and eager. But this clingy shit? Not hot. Clingy? I'm being clingy because I want to see you? Yeah, kind of. Look, I'll text you when I'm free, okay? But you gotta chill. I'd left his shop humiliated. The other artists had watched me go with knowing looks. I wasn't the first girl to mistake Cade's attention for affection, but I was stupid enough to keep trying, to accept his 2 a.m. texts, to be available whenever he decided he wanted me, to pretend I wasn't just another girl in his rotation now that the thrill of stealing me was gone. My friends tried to warn me. Stephanie was the most direct. "He's using you, Piper. You see that, right?" "It's complicated," I'd said over brunch, checking my phone for the 100th time. "No, it's not. You threw away a good man for a fuckboy who doesn't even claim you. That's not complicated, it's stupid. Brandon was boring. Brandon was stable, he loved you, he would have given you a good life. I don't want a good life. I want to feel alive." How's that working out for you? Not well, as it turned out. Cade would ignore me for days, then show up at my door at midnight, drunk and demanding. The sex was still intense, but rougher now. Less about passion and more about power. He knew I'd take whatever scraps he offered. I became that girl. The one who pretends not to care that he leaves immediately after. Who doesn't ask where he's been or who with. Who accepts maybe as a yes and silence as a temporary no. Who posts thirst traps hoping he'll notice and pathetic quotes about knowing your worth while accepting so much less. 3 months after leaving Brandon, I was a shadow of myself. I'd lost weight from anxiety, lost friends who got tired of watching my self-destruction, lost my self-respect chasing a man who'd never respected me in the first place. The violence started small. Cade grabbing my arm too hard when I asked about other girls, pushing me against walls that weren't quite playful anymore, throwing things that weren't quite aimed at me. I told myself it was passion, intensity, the price of feeling alive. "You love the drama," he'd say after our fights. "That's why you keep coming back." "Because I'm not boring like your ex." He was right. I did love it at first. The uncertainty, the highs and lows, the way makeup sex felt after screaming matches. It was everything Brandon wasn't, unpredictable, exciting, dangerous. But excitement and danger are close cousins. And one night, after I'd questioned him about perfume on his jacket, Cade showed me just how close. "Why do you always have to ruin everything?" he'd yelled, drunk and mean. "This is why I don't do relationships." Women always wanting to own you. I'm not trying to own you. I just want to know if you're sleeping with other people. "What if I am? You gonna leave?" He'd laughed. "Where are you gonna go?" Back to Brandon? I'm sure he'd love to take back his cheating ex. Don't talk about him. Why? Feel guilty. You should. Dude was ready to marry you and you threw it away for what? For this? Fuck you. That's when he'd grabbed me, hard, fingers digging into my wrist as he pulled me close. "No, fuck you, princess. You came begging for this. Don't get mad now that you got what you wanted. Let go. You're hurting me." "Am I?" He'd squeezed harder. "Thought you liked it rough." "Cade, stop, please." He'd released me with a shove, sending me stumbling. "Get out! And don't come back unless you're ready to be cool." I'd left with his fingerprints already darkening on my skin. Sat in my car staring at the marks, remembering how carefully Brandon had always touched me. How he'd ask permission before trying anything new. How he'd check if I was comfortable, if I needed anything, if I was happy. I'd been so happy and too stupid to know it. But I went back to Cade. Of course I did. Where else did I have to go? I'd burned my life down for him. Had to make it mean something. "Sorry about last night," he'd said when I showed up 3 days later. I was wasted. "We cool?" "Yeah," I'd lied, long sleeves hiding the bruises. "We're cool." The cycle repeated. Good days where he'd be charming, attentive, almost like the beginning. Bad days where he'd disappear, come back drunk or high, pick fights that ended with me in tears. Worse days where the fights got physical. Always small things. A shove here, a grabbed arm there. Never enough to feel like real abuse. Just enough to keep me scared, to make me grateful for the good days, to convince me this was what passion looked like. My family noticed at Thanksgiving. Hard not to when I'd lost 20 pounds and flinched when my brother hugged me too tight. "Where's Brandon?" my aunt had asked. "Such a nice boy. When's the wedding?" "We broke up," I'd said, pushing food around my plate. "What? Why? Did he cheat?" "No, it just wasn't working out." My mother had watched me across the table with knowing eyes, pulled me aside later in the kitchen. "Who is he?" she'd asked. "Who?" "The man who's got you looking like a ghost of yourself. The one who isn't Brandon. His name is Cade. You wouldn't like him." "Do you like him?" I'd thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know anymore." "Then why are you with him?" "Because I gave up everything for him." "It has to be worth it." "Oh, sweetheart," she'd said, pulling me into a hug. "That's not how it works. You can't stay in a bad situation just because you paid a high price to get there." But I did stay. Through Christmas, where Cade didn't even text. Through New Year's, where he showed up at 3 a.m. with another woman's lipstick on his neck. Through January, where the bruises got harder to hide, and the good days got rarer. The final straw came, ironically, on a good day. Cade had been sweet all week. Brought me flowers. Gas station carnations, but still. Stayed the night without being asked. Made breakfast wearing nothing but boxer shorts while I watched from bed, feeling something almost like happiness. "I've been thinking," he'd said, bringing me coffee. "Maybe we should make this official." "You and me." "Really?" "Yeah, I mean, you're here all the time anyway. Might as well. Might as well. The most romantic words ever spoken. But I was desperate enough to take it. "I'd like that." "Cool. Oh, but I need you to cover rent this month. Shop's been slow." "Of course." That should have been my warning. But I was so happy to finally be his girlfriend that I ignored it. Ignored a lot of things. The way he introduced me as my girl, but never by name. The way he'd take my credit card without asking. The way other girls still texted and he'd tell me not to be paranoid. I found out about the other girlfriends, plural, 2 weeks later. Not through snooping or stalking, but because one of them showed up at his apartment while I was there. "Who the fuck are you?" she'd demanded, pushing past me. "I'm Cade's girlfriend." "Who are you?" "His girlfriend? I'm his girlfriend. Have been for 2 years. 2 years, the entire time he'd been seeing me. "That's impossible," I'd said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew it wasn't. Cade had emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, freezing at the sight of us both. "Shit," was all he said. What followed was the kind of screaming match I'd once found exciting. 2 women fighting over a man who deserved neither of them. Accusations flying, truths revealed. Her showing me texts from last week. Me showing her pictures from last night. "You're both crazy," Cade had said when we turned on him together. "This is why I don't do labels." Women always making drama. "We're making drama?" The other girl, Heather, had shrieked. "You've been lying to both of us." "I never lied. You both assumed shit and got comfortable. That's on you." "I left my fiancé for you," I'd screamed. "And I left my husband," Heather had added. Cade had laughed, actually laughed. "Then you're both idiots. I never asked for that, never promised anything. You asked me to be your girlfriend literally 2 weeks ago." "Yeah, and?" "Doesn't mean exclusive. You didn't ask." That's when Heather hit him, just hauled off and slapped him hard enough to leave a mark. He'd grabbed her wrist, twisted it. I jumped between them, catching an elbow to the face that sent me to the floor. The neighbors called the police. Hard not to with all the screaming. They arrived to find Heather and me bruised, Cade still in his towel, the apartment destroyed from our fight. "Just a misunderstanding, officers," Cade had said, all charm. "You know how women get." But Heather and I were done covering for him. We both told the truth. About the lies, the manipulation, the violence that wasn't quite violence until it was. Showed our bruises, our texts, our proof that he'd been playing us both. They arrested him for domestic violence. Just for the night, but it was enough to break whatever spell he'd had on me. Sitting in that police station giving my statement, I finally saw him clearly. Not dangerous and exciting. Just a small, cruel man who got off on making women destroy their lives for his attention. Heather and I went for coffee after, comparing notes. The similarities were eerie. Both left good men for him. Both isolated from friends who tried to warn us. Both accepting scraps and calling it love. "I'm such an idiot," I'd said, staring at my bruised face in my phone camera. "We both are. But at least we're done now." "Are we? He'll be out tomorrow. He'll text, apologize, make it seem like our fault. Then we don't answer. We block him. We move on. Easier said than done. He did text. Called from different numbers when I blocked him. Showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m., drunk and remorseful. Left flowers, gas station carnations again, with notes about how I was different, special, how he'd change. I almost caved. Almost let him in that last night when he stood outside my door for an hour, voice breaking as he apologized. The old me would have opened the door, would have believed that this time was different, would have accepted breadcrumbs disguised as a feast. Instead, I called the police, got a restraining order, changed my locks, did all the things I should have done months ago. But the damage was done. Brandon had moved on. I'd seen his announcement on social media, engaged to someone who looked kind and stable and nothing like me. My friends had grown tired of my drama. My family worried but didn't trust my judgment anymore. I'd traded everything for passion and learned too late that passion without respect is just destruction with better marketing. Now I sit in my empty apartment. Brandon took his name off the lease, left me with rent I can barely afford, and wonder how I got here. How a smart woman with a good life chose to burn it all down for a man who warned me from the start that he was bad news. "You look like you're dying to run," Cade had said that first night. He was right. I was running. From stability, from predictability, from a proposal that came with dish soap instead of stars. But I'd run straight into traffic, mistaking the headlights for fireworks. Brandon used to leave me notes in my lunch bag. Little jokes or reminders that he loved me. I'd found it cheesy, wished he was more spontaneous. Now I'd give anything for a sticky note with his terrible handwriting telling me to have a good day. Cade left me notes too. Apologies for bruises, promises he'd be better. IOUs for rent money he'd never repay. I kept them as reminders. Not of him, but of who I became for him. Who I never want to be again. The bruises have faded. The restraining order keeps him away. But the real damage isn't visible. It's in how I flinch at unexpected movements, how I check my phone obsessively even though I've blocked his numbers, how I can't trust my own judgment anymore. I threw away a man who loved me for one who loved what he could take from me, mistook intensity for depth, chaos for passion, control for desire. Brandon texted once, after his engagement announcement, just 2 words, "Be happy." No anger, no guilt trip, just the same steady kindness I'd found so boring. The same good heart I'd crushed because it beat too steadily. I wanted to text back, to apologize again, to tell him I understood now what I'd lost. But what would be the point? Some mistakes can't be undone. Some bridges burn so completely there's nothing left to rebuild. So I'm starting over. Therapy twice a week. A studio apartment I can afford. No dating apps, no bars, no running toward anything that looks like danger. Just me, learning how to sit in the quiet. Learning that stability isn't a cage, it's a foundation. Learning that boring is just another word for peaceful. Learning that drama isn't love, it's just noise. Sometimes I dream about the life I threw away. Saturday farmers markets and Sunday meal prep, game nights and book clubs, a ring presented with dish soap and a question about October. It sounds perfect now. It sounds like everything. But that life belongs to someone else now. Someone who recognized its worth. Someone who didn't need to lose everything to appreciate something. I'm the cautionary tale now. The ex who cheated and lost it all. The woman who chose fire and got burned. The one my friends mention when someone complains their relationship is too stable. Remember what happened to Piper? Yes, remember what happened to Piper. She got exactly what she thought she wanted, and it destroyed everything she actually had.